Hey there, it's Tom Ryan, founder and CEO of ICR. Before we get into the next episode, I wanted to ask that you subscribe to the show. It'll help us get even more unique and interesting guests on the podcast and in turn continue to educate management teams and the growing ecosystem that creates value for fast-growing private and public companies. And while you're at it, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Very much appreciated.
That's been a mantra of mine all along. It's okay to try something. It's okay to do something different. When it's not working out, pivot.
Investors often talk about wanting companies to diversify. Well, you'd be hard-pressed to find a firm that's done that better than the superior group of companies.
If you've pivoted and it's still not working out, okay, drop it.
My name is Tom Ryan, and this is Welcome to the Arena, the ICR podcast. Each week, I sit down with today's business leaders to give you an inside scoop on some of America's most prosperous public companies, their origins, their challenges, and the keys to their success. Our guest today is Michael Benstock, Chairman and CEO of SGC, which is short for Superior Group of Companies. The shares trade under the symbol SGC. The business is comprised of 3 segments: healthcare apparel, branded products, and contact centers. Michael joins us to break down SGC's incredibly successful diversification effort over the years and discuss their commitment to quality service, smart acquisitions, advanced technology, and omnichannel commerce. Let's enter the arena with Michael Benstock. So let's start with the history of the company. I know the company was founded by your great-grandmother, which is like unbelievable, in 1920. Tell us about the history.
1920, my grandmother had loaned some gentlemen who were fellow immigrants from Lithuania some money. A couple years later, they couldn't pay her back. So she basically took the shares of the company. And she wound up marrying one of those guys later on, so she didn't have to take them. She would have had them anyway. My grandfather came in the business. A few years later, my father came in the business in the mid-1950s. And in 1968, they took the company public. They raised $1.1 million. They went on a slew of acquisitions after that, and they raised another $3 million in 1971, and they had 11 sponsors for that, banks that sponsored that for $3 million.
Unbelievable.
And basically, we were founded as a healthcare uniform company, and the name of the company was Superior Surgical, founded in New York. When we went public, the point was to give us a national footprint, get us away up from that northeastern customer base that we had, and also to diversify our uniform platform to do all kinds of uniforms. In 2014, we had just done a uniform acquisition, and we were looking around for more acquisitions, and we decided that we were going to look at a business that we had entered in 2003, which was to really service a lot of our branded uniform customers, that we would start a line of promotional products. You'd send them a uniform and you'd send them some logoed items, some swag as well. And we found a company in California that was not for sale, started by a group of guys while they were in college. I think the business was only 12 years old when we bought it. They were doing $32 million trailing 12. That same business does over $250 million 8 years later. So great investment on our part, super smart people, really taught me a lot of lessons along the way. 2008, we had a captive call center of our own doing customer service work and back office work for our company in El Salvador, where we also had a production planning office. And we had too much space, and I got tired of looking at a lot of empty space and said to one of our executives, let's go find a customer or two that we can manage some customer service programs for them just to help absorb some overhead.
Yeah.
Well, that rolled into a business. We did so well, they referred us. That business, without a sales force until last year, grew to almost $100 million with a really great EBITDA, 13% EBITDA. So we're essentially 3 businesses today. We're a branded products business, the healthcare uniform business, and then, of course, we have the call center business, and it's a very agnostic business. We basically answer the phone for U.S. clients with about 5,000 people in El Salvador, Belize, the Dominican Republic, and the United States answering the phone for those people. And they're fun businesses.
Did you know, like from a young age, that you might up leading the company one day, or were you kind of rebellious, like, hey, I don't want a part of this, or did you always think it was inevitable you'd be where you are today?
That's another long story, but I'll give you the short of it. My dad, every holiday, every vacation, every summer, had me working in the factories and the warehouses. That wasn't true of my sisters and brothers, by the way. They always got office jobs. Somehow we always thought I needed to be in the factory and the warehouses. But no, I was not going to have anything to do with this business. I was the rebellious type. At 18 years old, I got on an airplane. I'd already finished 2 years of college because I hated conventional learning.
Yep.
And so I started early and got a lot of college credits early. And I moved to Israel and I joined the IDF. And I did that for 3 years in 1976, 1977, 1978. And then I came back with my bride, who was a Danish immigrant to Israel.
Yep.
And we settled in Florida, where the family had just moved the business. And by the way, when I came back, we were coming back for a year or two just to make enough money to go back to Israel and buy a small apartment or something or pay rent for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But here I am 47 years later, and I'm still here. So that plan didn't work out.
It's always nice to have a plan. It never works out. So here you are. Talk about the scale of the business. It's obviously a public company. In preparing for the interview, I read that you talk to like 10 million consumers a year, outfit 5 million Americans, 7,000 workers. You have factories in 11 nations. Maybe just before we get into the minutia of the business, maybe talk about the scale of what you're doing, because it's like global, impressive, like really cool.
Yeah, each business it runs very differently. So the branded products business, their entire back office has always been in India. When those guys that I spoke about earlier started that business in college, they started with employee number one in India and then just grew it from there. So, it's very scalable. We've been able to scale it both organically and through acquisition, but we've always been able to do it extremely efficiently because of our back office in India. We also have a sourcing office in China, our own, about 25 people, as well as a laboratory in China where we do the testing of all our fabrics so we don't waste time trying to bring it to the United States to test them, although we do have a lab in the United States as well. That business has always been a remote business. All the executives live all over and all the salespeople live all over. So COVID was pretty easy for them.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go remote. They already were. And then we have our healthcare uniform business, which is based in Dallas and basically manages the portfolio of brands. Wink, which is our own brand,
Yep.
well-known nurses brand sold at retail. Carhartt, which is a licensed brand, as well as Fashion Seal Healthcare, which is our original brand that was founded in 1920. We have factories that primarily service their products in Haiti, on the border with the Dominican Republic. We say the quiet side of Haiti. We have 3 factories with over 1,200 people sewing, cutting our products. And then we have a sourcing office in Vietnam for the rest of the Asias. And of course, I said the call centers are in El Salvador, Belize, and wherever. So we're not afraid to be overseas. I'm very hands-on. So for me, probably it's the hardest because I like to see everybody every year in all those places. So I'm constantly on the go. This year, I've already been to India. I've already been to Vietnam. I've been all over. And I came up through the operations side of the business. So maybe that's why I really just want to see it to believe it all the time.
Yep.
I love the numbers, but actually sitting face to face with people and talking to them about their challenges is much different than doing it on Zoom.
It's incredible how Michael and his team at SGC have been able to build 3 really lucrative and diversified businesses under one corporate umbrella. I wanted to get his thoughts on the total addressable market across each of these distinct industries and where each business potentially goes from here.
The promotional products business is a $25 billion business. So branded products will do $350 million in that business. We're less than 1.5% of the market share. And we've got so many weak competitors who don't know how to behave, and we can talk about that afterwards. In this kind of an uncertain environment, they didn't know how to behave during COVID, and we ate their lunch. We literally took market share, and you can see the hockey stick that happened from 2019 to now with our sales because they went fetal and we went completely aggressive.
Yep.
And that's always been true during recessions or whatever. So it's a huge market. We're supposedly, as people report, the 8th largest from obscurity 10 years ago to the 8th largest. It's an unheard of in that business that anybody has grown like we have. About half organically and half through some very strategic acquisitions.
Yep.
And then on the healthcare uniform side of the business, they've got about a $4 billion marketplace, of which we command roughly $120 million in a normalized period. And it's a great business. It's virtually recession-proof. It did great during the pandemic, you can imagine, with healthcare workers having to be outfitted every single day to go to work.
Oh, my God, yeah.
And all the extra healthcare workers that were hired just to test people for COVID. And we sold, by the way, $150 million of PPE.
Yep.
which is not a product that we normally sell. So that was a great lift for us. And then you have the call center business, which is over $100 billion market, of which we're not even 100 million yet. And we have a niche. We go after underserved customers. There's a lot of big boys who will only go after a client if they have 500 seats or more to give them.
Yep.
We'll go after a client if they've got 20 seats to give us. And that business is extremely sticky. Once we train people up and get people going, we get to a very good place. We can pay people a little bit better in the call centers than the others can, so we get really the cream of the crop. And we can charge a little bit more because they're smaller clients and nobody else wants them. So it's been a very good, profitable business for us. But I mean, market share is just tremendous for all these businesses. Everybody says, well, it's going to be a little bit of a recession coming. It's like, yeah, but as long as we take market share, we're okay. And the proof in that is if you look at our branded products business, pretty flat this year. But the estimates are that the market is actually 15% smaller this year because marketing budgets have been cut and HR budgets have been cut. But somehow we're holding our own. We're getting more customers buying from us. That's the only way it stays flat. So this is what's happened after each recession, after each crisis. We will come out of this stronger than we went into it. We will have more market share than we had before, and we should see a very nice lift in sales once all this noise settles down. I don't know when that's going to be, but...
Yeah. Well, listen, when you run a company with 100-year plus history, you're always thinking long ball, and that's really key because you have an amazing track record over a long period of time. As the CEO, I wanted to ask you how you think, 3 to 5 to 10 years down the road, like actually executing on that supply chain wise, support staff with 3 businesses, international.
It's interesting. We used to spend days, weeks, and 5-year strategic planning.
Yeah.
And you can't plan 5 years in advance anymore.
Oh my God, it's an eternity.
At the rate at which the world is changing, it's hard enough to plan 2 years. I think the key is learning to pivot. Prior to COVID, we had a really good plan. We spent a lot of time in strategy meetings. In March of 2020, we shut down and we sat on 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, all over the country, all over the world. We're all on the phone together and said, what are we going to do? Who's going to buy branded merchandise? Nobody.
Yeah.
All right. Who's going to need call center services? Nobody. So what are we going to do? Okay, and somebody on the call said, why don't we sell PPE? And everybody's like, what's that? And they're like, well, the hand sanitizer, the masks, all the stuff. We've got a sourcing office in China. Let's just go into the PPE business. Got the lawyers on the phone. Well, the FDA, you got to be certified. I said, no, forget it. We're just going to buy it. We started buying masks and hand sanitizer and face shields and latex gloves and all those things and literally put containers on the water and sold them before they ever got to the United States and got paid for them before they got to the United States. So I think what it comes down to is pivoting. We are great at pivoting. And I've got a group of people that knows how to pivot and they know how to succeed, but they also know when to fail fast. And that's been a mantra of mine all along. It's okay to try something. It's okay to do something different. When it's not working out, pivot. All right. If you've pivoted and it's still not working out, okay, drop it. Let's go on to something else. There's so many things a leader can do in their business to move the needle. They don't need to get stuck on one thing.
Totally.
And so in each of our businesses, that's kind of how we measure people. It's, are you willing to take risks? Great. Do you know when it's time to pack it up?
Yeah.
And not everybody does. And quite frankly, I think it's a skill I've learned over the years. It's not something I knew when I was much younger.
I want to talk about acquisitions because I just think it's such a fascinating thing. Here at ICR, we've done a few over the years, and I'm not as experienced as you, but how many have you done, has SGC done? And what do you think are the most important things, like where you're buying maybe somebody's baby, they started it. How do you kind of go about that and then, delivering value?
We've done 12 in the last 22 years, so about every 2 years or so.
Yep.
Varying sizes. Some moved the needle, some were really small, but got us into products or marketplaces where we needed to be. I would tell you that I've learned a lot from my mistakes, Tom. I always thought it was all about the numbers until a couple of those acquisitions didn't do so well. So I've learned, first thing is, I won't buy a broken company.
Yep.
I have bought broken companies. They take too much time of your executive leadership to fix and to integrate and everything else. It's not worth it. Buy companies that are already successful, that have really smart people working for them. Yes, and those people who feel like that business is their baby, and then compensate them well enough in some kind of an earnout that makes them a lot richer than they would have been otherwise. and be willing to share in the wealth as you drive that business forward.
Totally.
Make them your business partner. But it does come down to culture. In the first few acquisitions we did, we hardly did an HR audit. You do an HR audit, make sure people are being paid correctly and all that. But we didn't do a culture audit at all. Now, we spend so much time with the owners and their executives that we understand their culture probably better than they do by the time we get around to buying them. So easily integratable, good culture, the right people who want to stay with us. We have bought companies where, the owners wanted out. And because we have a back office in India, we can take their business pretty much, keep all their salespeople, and basically take the rest of their business and roll it into our India office and do it very effectively and make a lot of money doing it, make it very accretive very quickly. So we've done some of those too. That's not fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun to find great leaders who are additive to our business, who can really help us grow the rest of our business as well.
It sounds like you have a great playbook that's evolved over a lot of time to kind of do things successfully. And not everybody is perfect, but you always want to increase your odds. And it sounds like you've been able to do that.
Yeah, my father had an expression. He used to say, "It ain't the last streetcar to Brooklyn." And so, I'd fall in love with a company or whatever, and he'd say, if it ever you're not feeling like you really should do this, it's okay to walk away,
Yeah.
It ain't the last streetcar to Brooklyn. And my people have heard that from me so many times now, they're probably sick of it.
That's funny. I'm going to steal that. So one thing, we're living in a world not only with all kinds of volatility in a lot of different ways, but technology is changing so much. How do you think about technology across the business lines and throughout the businesses?
I get asked this a lot by investors, particularly on the call center business, because they believe that the call center business is going to become obsolete. And part of it will. We were early adopters of AI technology in our call centers, and we have layered into almost every single incoming call some form of AI technology, sometimes multiple forms of AI technology, listening to the call, gauging sentiment, coaching the agent as he goes along, scoring the call as it happens, giving immediate feedback to that person and the training department and that person's supervisor so that the next call goes better.
Interesting.
And the analytics we're able to give our customers is incredible. And as a result of that, we have shortened the time that most of our calls take, which is great for our customers because they need fewer agents. So they see us as a real great business partner. We're able to charge, by the way, for some of that AI technology as well, because their customers are getting a better experience. In our branded products business, it used to take us a week to produce a deck for a salesperson who was going to see a customer. Now they go into an app, they put in the information, AI produces a deck of all the different possibilities with that customer's logo on it already,
Wow.
based on the demographic that customer is serving and everything else. And that's their presentation deck. And so something that was taking a week of a couple people's time is now taking literally minutes. They can get an appointment tomorrow and have a deck tomorrow. It's phenomenal. Using it on the analytics side as well, using it on the legal side. I mean, all throughout our business, everywhere I go, and I have a discussion with everybody, it's like, well, what AI are you using? Once a year, we come together, all the AI groups from all these businesses, and have one
interesting
big meeting. And
Yeah.
that's their sharing meeting, because it's funny how proprietary people can be. They develop some great AI technology, and it's like they don't want to share it even with the rest of the business. So
Yeah.
we make them share it. We actually have white labeled some people's AI technology so that they can only sell it to us.
Yep.
And we become so good at implementing. That's the real key with AI technology. Some people are still 2 years in and haven't implemented a good AI solution, even though they've got it. They're trying to, because they haven't learned how to properly prompt their AI. Our people are, for some reason, Tom, I can't tell you why, they're just smart. They know how to do it, and we've done it with dozens of customers already who all operate differently. We've implemented AI, and the AI we've implemented each of these customers is different one from the next. So it's multiple implementations to the point where the AI company wants us to become their implementer going forward.
No way.
And that could be a line of business for us for our call centers as well.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think the implementation part, a lot of people get paralyzed. They want it to be like fully baked and perfect. And I always say, like, you can't steer a parked car, right? Like, get it moving, get it going, and like, we'll figure it out. Like, it's just not going to be fully baked and perfect, right?
But we've all been subject to some bad AI experiences too. And I had one myself recently that I tell my people about. And it's like, we can't be this guy. We got to make sure at least it's baked enough that it's an okay experience.
For sure. Have you ever divested of any operations? Or would you consider like a portfolio management where you're kind of buying and selling businesses? How would you comment on that?
We've divested of businesses over the years. The last one we divested was a golf shirt business in 2008, right before the recession. Great timing. It was perfect timing because it would have gotten crushed during the recession. I think we're good fiduciaries for the business. Look, I own with my family and other insiders close to 40% of the shares of the business. We're great proxies, I think, for our shareholders. We're going to do what's best for our shareholders. If at the right time we are made the right offer, we decide to go out in a process to find the right offer, but it's got to be at the right valuation, and there's a right time for everything. I don't believe that time is right now, but sometime in the future. We get asked most about the call center business because that's the only business that's not a product business, right? It's a service business.
Yeah.
And when the valuations are better in that business, we'll certainly take a look at it and test the market.
Yeah. I know that you have a philosophy on capital allocation that probably came from your dad as a guess of mine, don't over leverage and get caught. How do you think about that? What have you learned from your dad and kind of growing up in the business?
Every time there was a hurricane in Florida, family would get together under one roof and play Monopoly, and my dad would always win because he hoarded cash. He would say cash is king while we were all buying crummy properties, right?
Yeah.
And he felt that way in business too. He didn't like debt. My dad hated debt, and for most of his career did not have any debt in the business.
Yep.
Leverage is useful. We don't like to get levered more than 2 times, 2.5 times EBITDA. We've been higher, and I don't sleep at night when it's higher than that. Post-pandemic, things got a little bit out of control, and we were able to delever very quickly. We don't have a lot of capital expense needs. Generally run 1.5% per year. Every 6-7 years, we're putting in a new ERP or new robotics in our distribution center, and it rises to 3%. But that's pretty well the extent of it. We pay our dividend. Our shareholders like our dividend a lot.
Since 1970, right? In the 70s somewhere.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Right. It's been a long time, and year after year, we've paid it. So through a lot of recessions and a lot of trying times. So we're looking to create enough cash and enough capital in the business to be able to continue to do acquisitions. Generally, when we do acquisitions, there's not a lot of cash up front. So it doesn't weigh heavily on the company. But that's pretty well it. It's cash is king. We still feel that way. I love being under 2 times. If we get up to 2.5 times, that's fine, but we'll delever immediately after that.
Yeah. Hey, listen, that's a great message. You see companies over the course of my career, and I'm sure you've seen your competitors and others get over leveraged and they turn into a zombie, and there's kind of no way out of it if you're not growing. So I think it's a great message for shareholders. Michael, my last question for you is, what do you think your legacy is going to be at SGC? What do you kind of want your tenure here to be most remembered for?
There'll be a bunch of things people will say. They'll say that he often created a crisis so that he'd have something to solve. Never afraid of a crisis. I think people will say that as time went on, he surrounded himself by smarter and smarter people who could run the business and the businesses without his day-to-day intervention. They'd say he knew how to take risks and he knew how to fail fast. When he wasn't going the right way, failed fast and went on. He was always mindful of the balance sheet when looking at those risks. I think the people closest to me would say he enjoys being in the factories and the warehouses more than he ever enjoyed being in an office. And, I learned something when I was in the IDF, and that's that you always lead from the front. There's nothing that was ever beneath me to do. I've sewn on a sewing machine. I have cut on a cutting table. I've cleaned bathrooms. I've run factories, and I don't ask people to do anything that I couldn't do myself. Now, today there's a lot of people smarter than me. I can't do all that they do. I think my legacy, they gave me an award a few years ago for like a lifetime achievement for the Uniform Manufacturers Association. I'm like, I'm not done.
That was Michael Benstock, Chairman and CEO of Superior Group of Companies. It's an amazing corporate story from its founding over 100 years ago. It's also a real diversified business with acquisition expertise and a shareholder-friendly capital allocation strategy. Thanks to Michael for taking the time to chat with us today, and we'll check in with him and his team down the road as they come out of this period of volatility with greater market share and wind at their back. If you found this episode insightful, please subscribe to the show on your podcast app. Throw us a 5-star rating. It'll really help us grow the show and get more interesting voices on the podcast. I'm Tom Ryan. We'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.